Greenspan, finally, right? And it's also probably a very ironic statement, but he was speaking at the Council on Foreign Relations, and just yesterday, or the day before yesterday, I think, and he basically said that there is no way that the Fed can end QE without creating turmoil. Now, he was asked, if he thought there would be a crisis, and he said, well, I don't really want to use that word.
Well, let's leave the word crisis out.
Okay, extreme instability or volatility.
If I can use the substitute term turmoil.
I mean, I think there are other words that could be more appropriate, like disaster, economic apocalypse, Armageddon. I think the former Fed chairman is sugarcoating it. But, his criticism of quantitative easing, and he basically said it didn't work. He said quantitative easing didn't work, right? But the thing is, not only didn't it work, it did harm. If it just didn't work, that wouldn't be so bad. The fact of the matter is, it did tremendous harm to the economy. It has structurally weakened the economy in ways that are only going to become apparent now that the Fed is no longer doing it. Like if, you can't feel the pain because you have Novocaine. Well, when the Novocaine wears off, then you feel the pain. So it's starting to wear off now that the Fed has said it's no longer doing QE. And even though it still has this huge balance sheet that it can't do anything with, can't shrink, Alana Greenspana referred to that balance sheet as a tinderbox. He said it's a tinderbox. It just hasn't been lit yet. Well, meaning it's going to be lit. And he said we're going to have a lot of inflation. He's saying the same thing as Peter Schiff. Maybe he's not saying potential hyperinflation, but you know what? He probably thinks that. He's just trying to, be careful with his words. But, this is too little too late. Why did Alana Greenspana wait for the Fed to end QE before criticizing it? Why didn't he criticize it from the beginning like I did? See, it might have made a difference if Alana Greenspana had come out against QE from the inception of the program. Maybe we wouldn't have had QE3 or QE2. Why does he wait until the Fed says it's finished before finally saying, it's not a good idea and it didn't work? I mean, did he actually have to see it not work to make that conclusion? No, he had to know it from the beginning that it wouldn't work. He just didn't want to be critical. I guess now that he knows that there's going to be a crash, he wants to somehow disassociate himself from the policy so he can say, I told you so, right? Oh, I warned you. Yeah, what good are your warnings now? We needed you, years ago. He should have been criticizing the Fed like I was. One of the interesting things, he's not really getting quoted in the mainstream media for what he said over at the New Orleans conference. I was down there in New Orleans for that conference, and Greenspan was the keynote speaker. And in that conference, again, he reiterated the fact that QE didn't work, that the balance sheet was a tinderbox. In fact, that's where the tinderbox comment came from, not from the Council on Foreign Relations. That's where the turmoil comment came from, and that the Fed can't exit without creating turmoil. But when he was talking about that tinderbox, right? He said, he was asked specifically, well, what's going to happen to the price of gold? He said it's going up. And then he was asked, well, by how much? And he said measurably. And I think he means it's going to go up a lot. I mean, obviously you can measure anything, but I think he means there's going to be a significant increase in the price of gold because he believes there's going to be a significant increase in inflation. But one of the most interesting comments, or maybe disturbing comments, that Greenspan made is when Mark Faber was basically rightly criticizing the Fed. He said, look, Greenspan, you were the enabler. Because of you, because of the Fed, because of your monetary policies, you enabled big government. You have financed these deficits. You were an enabler of the welfare state. You allowed the government to spend a lot more money than it would have been able to spend had you not been so accommodative, right? Had you been more independent. And then Greenspan basically had the nerve to tell Faber, you're wrong. You got it backwards. It's not my fault. It's Congress's fault because Congress voted for all the spending. They voted for all the deficits, and we at the Fed had no choice but to do Congress's bidding because they ran deficits. We had no choice but to accommodate them or monetize them. And then, Faber said, well, isn't the Fed independent? What about the Fed independence? And Greenspan says, well, whoever said the Fed was independent? Well, he did. Everybody did. They all maintained it was independent. And now Greenspan is saying, well, we were never independent. We're just the lapdogs of Congress. We have to do whatever they want. We have no independence whatsoever. We exercise no restraint or no control.